Hey now, today Paminga announces that our IFS form builder now supports internationalization. So you can translate your form into any number of languages. You can render sections, rows, and fields conditionally based on the language selected. It'll automatically detect the language in the web browser, or you can pass an argument to the rendering JavaScript to have it render in whatever language you explicitly want. Further, you can conditionally redirect the prospects that submit your form to different landing pages, thank you pages based on the language they submitted the form in. But if you're not redirecting, you can conditionally present different thank you messages, potentially in different languages. Let's take a look at this. So get over to Paminga, and I happen to have a brand new form here. Let's see. We'll first go up to the little globe, internationalization. Right now, this form is in English, tells us, hey, this is the default language for your form. I will click to add a new language. We've got, you can do whatever you want here. I'll say Spanish. Now, we'll be integrating an AI to help with translation here. That'll come in a new release soon. But what I'll show you here is that here we have a text element called my form, and then a first name, last name, and email address. I'm going to hit cancel, show you that's the exact order that these fields appear here. So I didn't hit save, so the Spanish isn't there. So I'll put it there. It's waiting for me. All right. So I'm not going to pretend that my Spanish is that good. I'll say mi forma, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. Apologies if you speak Spanish and I am butchering everything. And I know this isn't the right thing, but I'll say primero because I know that means first. So for the form field first name, it's requiring a translation for the label, for everything that faces your prospect, everything prospect facing that gets rendered out in the real world. So if we wanted to override our placeholder, we would have to put a value here. If we wanted a default value, we'd have to put it there. So if we want to require a first name, we need to put some message here. I'm going to pretend that I've got a message. I'll say some Spanish message here. I'll say message in Spanish. And I'm going to I'll copy the word Spanish. Then let's hit save and see what happens. So we've got primero as a label for this field. And if I click on it, we can see that it's primero and that the validation rule says some message in Spanish. Now I can easily toggle between the two languages. You can see this one's gray, it's the selected language. And hey, we're missing some required translations. Because we're missing required translations, we are not able to publish this form in its current form. We have to solve these problems first. If I jump over to the English side of things, we'll see that everything's good with the English form, but now it lets me know up here, hey, one or more languages are missing required translations. So it's going to keep you on the rails, right? I'll click on edit for Spanish, and here we are back in our Spanish. So we'll go to our last name, and I thought it was called, I don't know what it's called. I'll pretend it's Spanish last name. Apologies again. And I'll just put the word Spanish here, and then I'll move down to the email address, and I'll say Spanish email, and we'll give this one just the word Spanish. And then finally the buttons. So this form builder supports multi-page forms. So right now you've got only a submit button is all that matters on this. I'm going to hit save. We only have a submit button right now, right? And it needs a translation. But we could go over here to pages, add a second page, and I'll just throw something in there. I'll put, say, address fields in there. And now they all require translation as well. If I jump back to edit the Spanish version, that's when these buttons particularly matter. Now the next button and the back button will be required. And notice down here, we now have a next. It'll take us to the next page to let us translate the second page where we've got all those address fields. What I'm going to do is cancel all that, and I'm going to delete page 2 to simplify my life in this example. I should point out, I could go here to edit the translations all in one place. But I can just as easily click on, say, the button here, and it's right here. So I'll call this Spanish button. And now we're done. All of our red is gone. We don't have any required fields that are missing. And you can see that we've got the ability to publish now. We don't have to hit save because I've got autosave turned on. So that's how the platform guides you to make sure that you don't have any fields that are missing. It won't let you publish a form with any translation that's missing. But there's more. Let's check it out. Let's say we wanted to make this field conditional. display this element conditionally. We've made it possible to pivot not only on your account and contact fields. So I'm going to say, show this field if these conditions are true. What conditions? So we've added language here. So now if I want to pivot based on language, it knows which languages we've selected, English and Spanish. So if we added 10 more languages, they'd all show up here. So I'll say only show this if this form is in Spanish. And I'll hit apply. So now the first name is only required in Spanish. Let's see what that looks like in preview. I'm going to change our preview. So we're in English, so it's not showing up. And I'll go to Spanish. And now that primero does show up. And you can see it's all been translated right to, well, my version of a translation. We can do fields conditionally. We can do this text conditionally. We can display it conditionally. We can do the same thing with rows and sections, right? We can even do the same thing with conditional navigation. If we have a second page and we want to make our navigation conditional, those conditions can be based on language. So you can, if you've got an 8-page form where you're routing to different pages based on selections, you can do that based on language. Pretty cool. Really quite amazingly powerful, actually. More than pretty cool. All right, I'm going to get rid of that conditional, and I'm actually going to get rid of page 2 altogether. And let's see, final thing, actions. When somebody submits your form, you can just display a thank you message, for example, but I can add a conditional experience. So if the language is Spanish, I'll try to be quick here. If the language is Spanish, then redirect to a certain URL, and I'll say, https:// pretend I've got spanish.com. Okay. So now I'm redirecting to this URL if the form's in Spanish, otherwise defaulting back to this message. But I can add as many conditionals as I want here. So you can, conditionally redirect to a URL, conditionally display a thank you message. I could just as easily switch this to display a thank you message, translate that to whatever I want. So that's it. We've got pretty darn cool support for internationalization. Like I said, we'll add some AI translation, and I'd love to hear your feedback from the IFS community. Thanks for watching.